Welcome back into the Sports Source. You would have enjoyed the between segment banter. We were discussing High-Lie, for those of you who remember what that is. This segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. They don't have to worry. We're talking sports, college sports, not High-Lie here. When you think about insects and pest control, you often think about just things that are a nuisance. You know, I got something in my house, I need to get rid of them. I want to prevent these things, ants, from getting into my house. I've got mosquitoes, I want to kill those things off. But when you're talking about termites and carpenter bees, you're talking about beasts that can actually do serious damage to your home. A little prevention on the first part can save you a lot of money on the back end of this thing. Southeast Termite and Pest Control, they can help you check for and get rid of termites and carpenter bees. Give them a call this week. The Haynes family's done a tremendous job since 1971. Big part of the East Tennessee community, Southeast Termite and Pest Control. Okay. Major news around college athletics this week. I'll read you some stuff right here. Kirby Smart was given a $13 million contract per year at Georgia, which tells you that, yep, there's still plenty of money in the sports world. The UAB football team became the first Division I football program to join a players' association, getting very close to a union. More states joined the state of Tennessee's lawsuit against the NCAA. But then came word that the NCAA could be forced to pay $2.7 billion to past athletes who are not allowed to make money off NIL. Here's what ESPN had to say about that. Sources told ESPN this week that parties have proposed the NCAA's national office, rather than its individual member schools or conferences, would pay for the settlement of past damages over a period of 10 years, so $270 million a year for 10 years. The NCAA payments would be paid to former college athletes who say they were illegally prevented from making money by selling the rights to their name, image, and likeness. The settlement would come with a corresponding commitment from conferences and schools to share revenue with athletes moving forward. The settlement would establish a framework for power conferences to share revenue with their athletes in the future. Sources have told ESPN schools are anticipating a ceiling of nearly $20 million per year for athletic revenue share moving forward. That would mean taking the collectives out of it, bringing everything back inside, and then we can read a little bit more. Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports added this. Bowl season director Nick Caparelli, told at Yahoo Sports in Phoenix that he expects NIL to soon come in-house and for athletes to sign binding compensation contracts with schools that will require them to play in bowls and college football playoff games, eliminating or greatly reducing opt-outs. And you would assume that would also cut down on the transfer portal nonsense we've been having. Now, I'm going to shut up and just leave it to Ryan. If all that comes to pass, everything fixed? Does this sound like everything's fixed to you? I mean, it slows the transfers, the opt-outs. You don't have the different collectives doing different things, different laws of the lands. Everybody's getting X. Does it sound like a fix, or are you still sitting there going, the NCAA will screw this up?
I mean, there's always a very real possibility the NCAA will screw something up. But I will say, if you think the NIL and transfer portal are the biggest problems facing college sports, this is a big fix for a lot of that. I think this is where things need to go because, again, you could curb transfers, you could handle the Wild Wild West goes away, all that stuff in the NIL world. So a lot of things do get solved with this. I don't like the conference realignment and all that other stuff. This doesn't do anything to solve that, obviously, and I think it in some ways might create a bigger problem, which is the schools that don't have the money to participate in this get left out. You're talking upwards of $20 million per school. Some can't afford that.
Miami of Ohio won't have that. You're also talking about, of course, and I'm leaving it out for the purposes of this conversation, what happens with Title IX?
Right.
What happens, does softball make as much as football? Does the rowing team make as much as the basketball team? Does the women's basketball make as much as men's basketball? All that still has to be coming out. But for the most part, on this, you feel good about it or no?
Yes, I will say this, though. The warning here is this wouldn't necessarily end external deals. This would just cover a baseline deal for all athletes. $20 million wouldn't necessarily cover all of your expenditures in the future anyway on athletes. So there could be a deal where to win a bidding war for a player, you might have to find external deals on top of the $20 million or so that a school might be able to provide to all of its athletes. So
in other words, this would be $20 million from the schools, plus you'd still have collectives.
Potentially.
The one thing I read said that this would be bringing collectives in-house.
Well, you would, but it wouldn't necessarily cap the total revenue for all athletes at a school at $20 million. So you still might have to go beyond it to remain competitive for some schools.
Gotcha.
I like the idea of it going in-house. I think within 3 years we will not have collectives. I also like the idea of signing a contract. If you sign an NIL deal, you don't just make yourself a free agent every year. You sign a 2 or 3 year contract, and then you have to go to a bowl game or you have to go to a playoff game, whatever. The one thing I'm concerned about, though, is you're going to go back 10 years and pay all this money. Well, why aren't you going back 20 years? Why aren't you going back 30 years?
They didn't file the lawsuit, I guess.
So the lawsuit was 10 years ago?
Yeah, I don't. The people who filed the lawsuit, I guess, are guys from
that era.
Yeah, it's kind of like the O'Bannon case that started.
I thought I read it could go back farther. Could it not?
I don't know,
Yeah.
but I don't like that part of it.
Okay, well, I'm looking more at the does this fix the issues we're dealing with college sports today? Yay or nay?
It has to improve it. Binding agreements, which essentially don't exist. You can have players, there are players who come to agreements with their collectives, and then they go back and say, actually, I need a little bit more.
Right.
And then they renegotiate the deal that they just did. This should eliminate that. There will still be transfers, there will still be movement, that will still happen, but it will be more difficult, I have to imagine, with binding agreements with a school as opposed to with an outside source.
I think it fixes a lot of the problems that I haven't liked over the last 18 months, 2 years or whatever. But I also think this really will hasten the fact that you're going to come up with a super elite group of teams, and a lot of people that right now consider themselves there aren't going to be in it. And I think that's what it does. I think it fixes some problems, but some of these schools are no longer going to be Division I greats, Power 5, all that.
I think you're getting that anyway, though.
Yeah, but I think this will hasten that, which maybe that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not necessarily going to be bad, but I think it does fix 75% of the problems.
On paper, it looks like an improvement. I think it may not be the fix, but it's an improvement.
Yeah.
But there's still going to be issues with it, even if they can make it happen. All right. When we come back, let's get into some of this hastening of conference changes and stuff. Should the SEC football program take a lesson from the past? We'll discuss fears and schedules next and talk about a new project that Jimmy Himes has going on. Going back on the Sports Source.